How you doing, Dror?
I'm tired this morning, but I'm doing good. What about you?
Yeah, you're always working the night, so this was your suggestion to shoot early in the morning.
It
So,
was. I was doing it in a period when I was not working in the nights.
so big news this week. What do you think the big Apple news? We've been talking about that for a while, and I'm not wearing my normal Empress top. In fact, I have this Deja Vu top on. It feels like a bit of deja vu in terms of what Apple are doing. What's your sort of thoughts on that?
You labeled me in the last few episodes as an Apple fanboy. Uh, you want me to be the fanboy? I can play the fanboy. Actually, Yash, I want you to start on this one. I want to hear your take first.
Yeah, look, so I'm wearing this top because I think it is deja vu. Apple have, we talked about Google a few weeks ago and how many times they talked about AI. Apple have the opposite approach. Let's not talk about it till the end. And in fact, they've rebranded AI to Apple Intelligence, and so at least it's AI. But I think that's very Apple-esque, and to own the terminology and have their own take on it. And look, I think to their credit, they are having their own take on it. I thought it was pretty interesting to see, their view on how they're going to roll out AI. Obviously, they've been behind. One of the other things is that I think is good. I bought an M1 Mac and an M1 iPad. I finally feel there's a use for that. And we've talked about this previously, and I don't know, they have the chips, they've just not never utilized that. And so I think it's good to know, having for all of you out there who bought these M1 chips in either their iPad or their MacBook and so forth, they have some use. And so, I think Apple doing things locally, I think, is quite interesting compared to maybe some of the other competitors. And I think, their big play around using AI, having local models is interesting. And the partnership with OpenAI as well is good. And, to sort of reiterate that as well, I mean, they're passing on, where they can't deal with things to OpenAI. So I think this integration with LLMs at the operating system level, once again, you talked about that before, is starting to happen with Apple. And I think Apple are well positioned to be that gateway. And I guess good news for them is they're going to sell more iPhones and more product, which is what their angle is. It does make me think that that OpenAI will potentially come out with their own device, and so I don't know what your thoughts are. Yeah, what's your sort of thoughts on the functionality of what they're releasing initially with what Apple are doing?
I think everybody was disappointed, and I think that's. I think when you're disappointed, it means that you have expected something you didn't, and you got less than what you expected. I was not disappointed, not because I got what I expected, which is not much, and I think that's the news. I think the news here is that it's not a bigger deal. Apple doesn't make a bigger deal out of AI as everyone else is in the industry. They're saying it I think strategically they're saying it as an incremental improvement of their ecosystem by adding Apple intelligence to everything. And it's a classic Apple move. Embrace the new technology when it's right into their ecosystem and way of doing things. So I think in of itself, what did you really expect? Well, what was people disappointed that they didn't show? I mean, see, if you've been playing with LLMs and voice agents and stuff, the state of the art in these technologies is not yet to a place where people have been dreaming about Siri that actually can do everything. It's just not there yet. So if you've been following so I think that most people who are paying attention are either pretend to be disappointed to get some attention on the internet, or more likely not really that disappointed. Basically, Apple did this, the expected name, which is to bake this capability to make everything in their ecosystem smart and better in order at the end to, maintain the ecosystem and sell more products, basically. That actually makes me, that's point number one, all right? Now, some cool features there. I really like some of the features they showed, especially the new calculator. That's pretty neat. I think it's, you for those who didn't see it, you basically, you take the iPad, you type the actual equation, it solves it dynamically. You paint the picture of a physics problem, it solves it. That's something I personally was working on maybe 20 years ago, trying to solve it in a complete different type of technology, much more coded. parameterized kind of algorithms as opposed to intelligence. So it was neat to see, but that's candy. That's eye candy. That's not a groundbreaking new technology. Not a huge amount of change. How many people use the calculator in that way? Maybe a few here for demonstration purposes and to show you a cool feature. That's kind of the first reaction to that little thing. So that's kind of a little bit about Apple. So the big thing that was worrying a lot of people in the industry is this announcement that they would include OpenAI in their, in their operating system. They have a partnership with OpenAI, and what they unveiled was nowhere near the things that you two should be worried about. So what's the worry? The worry is that we articulated it in this show a few weeks ago. In the same way that IBM including the operating system of Microsoft into their PC business, and Microsoft on the back of that became the dominant factor, the dominant player in computing for 2 decades, and basically killed IBM monopoly in computers. Definitely on the back of the growth of personal computers.
And I think that's a great point, though, Dror. I think that OpenAI can build a device where that is native throughout it, and that's what people want to use.
Yeah, well, I got a point. So my point was that the point of concerns that we raised in this show,
we need like a little Deja. Now that we've got enough stuff that we're saying that starts to happen, we need to have a tool.
We do. Apple is rumored to be including Google Gemini in its coming iOS updates. And it's akin to IBM letting Microsoft run the operating system back in the PC era. The risk was if that's the most interesting technology change, potential platform shift, level technological change, and you outsource that to the leading company in the market, you're going to lose your position. That's basically been articulated by Chamath from the All In Pods, and we also articulated it here in this, and a lot of other people. So that did not happen. So the integration of ChatGPT into the iOS is not at this stage a deep integration at the level of replacing Siri. It's basically almost like search with Google. It's a little bit of like you can talk to the Apple Intelligence, and if you're not happy, ask ChatGPT. Now, if that's what they've done is tactical, meaning or is that strategic? I think it's strategic. I don't know where it's going to play out towards. It's really a function of how fast they can catch up. Apple has a lot of AI to catch up on. But if that strategic basically steals walls up, ChatGPT off the main value of the ecosystem, which is the device, the data on the device. Now they're saying the chip should be on the device and so forth. By the way, the whole local models, I think that's a ruse. I don't buy that. Technically speaking, if your network is fast enough, you don't really need that. And the network is fast enough, G5, G6 coming. That's not really people like to think about it like it's more private. There's nothing more private about that. Your software can be not private if it's on your device, and it can be not private if it's on the cloud. Or it can be private in the cloud and can be private on the device. It's an architectural question as opposed to, but it's a selling point that makes you say, I need a new device, I need a new chip. I'm going to buy, and then, and Apple will be happy to sell that to you. What do you think?
I want to just sort of jump in here a bit too, just around Apple integrating with OpenAI. There's also talk around them planning to do the same thing with Gemini. And so I think this is once again going to be a little bit like the gateway to search. And, what's going to be the default, what's your default LLM, or what's your default go-to in that? And the question is whether they'll have their own one or whether they can compete as effectively as some of the other players that are developing these big models. So I think they're what I think is, and I talked about this just with my wife actually when I was on a walk before talking about, what Apple have just released. And we're in a bubble. We're always looking at AI, all these AI tools and all these, but if it's on your device and it's integrated and people are generally lazy, they're just going to use it. So I think they've got a great base of users with their Mac and with their iPhones and their iPads. If it's there, they'll just use it. So it's a great way for you to upgrade all your devices. It doesn't have to be. Apple has never been. That's why, ironically, I have an Android phone because I got pissed off of paying $2,000 for a phone where I didn't have the latest technology. And so for me, Apple is not the best technology company, but they give a great experience. And so I have a Mac and I'm on a Mac now and I have an iPad. I think I just got a bit annoyed that I should be able to switch when I want to. And I think I've taken myself out of that ecosystem to just choose the products I want. But I mean, that was a very hard and conscious decision that I made.
But are you able to switch when you want to?
I am now.
To switch to another what? To switch to another Android?
No, I can now switch to an iOS device or an Android device.
How? Where's all your photos?
So most of my stuff is in like Google, like the Google side of things. So Gmail.
So you switch one ecosystem with another ecosystem. That's it. Listen, there's only two ecosystems. One says about the other, oh, they are bad and garden wall, and the other one says, what do you want from us? So there are two ecosystems. It's the same shit.
No. There's a difference. You can't use iCloud on Android. So hey, if they allowed that, I'd be switching. But my point is, they've got this deep embedded thing. They don't sell the most phone. They don't sell the most computers. But I have a lot of their devices, and that's what most of their consumers do. So I think they're going to keep people on there. I think for most people, they aren't concerned about whether they just want to access it, and so they are making it accessible. I think it is. Whilst it's not revolutionary, what they are doing is making it available in there. And if this is their first iteration, they're just going to make it easier. I did want to just quickly talk about, you're saying you don't think much about the on chip. I'd like to just can I just share a quick article and we just discuss that? I just want to talk about this article about Apple's AI strategy by a guy named John Huang. What I found interesting about this was just really this on edge. And you're saying you don't think it's a big deal. I think it's just interesting to see that their approach is to go, let's have on device, let's go to the server when we need to, and use these open models. So they're kind of providing a combination of all of these options. And I mean, you're saying it's not a big deal. I think it's an interesting approach. When I talked, like I'm using my wife as the example because as a non-techie person, she's like, oh, that sounds good. I want to keep. So even if it isn't you're kind of saying the privacy, it's not as big a deal. I think people will feel that, and the perception and the focus on privacy for them using this, to me, is pretty good messaging at best. Like I do think there's something there. What's your thoughts on the way they're doing all these things?
I have not seen a compelling argument from a technical standpoint what makes an AI an inference on device, okay, better than an inference on a remote device. It's just, what's the difference? Let me break it down for a second from a technical standpoint. You take the query, which is like some voice or text that I wrote. You send it to a software module that then inferences and gives you a response back. If that software module lives on a cloud somewhere, or it lives on my actual device, or it lives on the Mac, and I'm talking from my kitchen, I mean, to this day and age, that the latency that you would get is not a game changer. The latency that you see from the AI, ChatGPT, that's not a function of the network of where your computer is. It's a function of the size of the quality of the model. So now you're saying, no, privacy. What about privacy? I'm saying, look, the argument about privacy are misleading. The fact that something is on your device doesn't make it inherently more private, because you can have software that sits on your device and reads everything and sends it somewhere. And equally so, you can have software on a cloud that's super well tightened, how to break to, and so forth. I like the idea of competing for privacy and perception, but Apple's strategy on privacy is a bit misleading. They say we're the privacy company, and the definition of privacy is that we can do it because we're private, so trust us. And it boils down to trust. So if you trust Apple, then good, you can, their privacy. If you don't trust them, they're not privacy.
Well, I think that's their play. It's always been their play about owning that. Obviously, I thought this article was interesting just around being able to, a couple of interesting points, and not being beholden to NVIDIA. So if you can have all the compute on your devices, Apple controls that. So they, this allows those Apple users to have on device and offload stuff. So I go, there's something there that is interesting. I think as well, they can also get they can do a bit of catch up with this approach, and to kind of understand how people are using OpenAI, and to kind of provide some of those services down the line. So I think having that ability is actually pretty good. Without having the functionality, they're able to do that. They include Gemini. They include what they're doing with OpenAI. I am sure they'll be able to build something that is useful on top of that. Whereas they don't have any of that data now, I think that's going to help them a lot. So yeah, I think it doesn't hurt them as long as they offer as many. You know, if they offer Anthropic, they offer you choose your flavor, and that's embedded into the OS. That's the way I see this work kind of playing out. But I kind of think this is a big play to keep people on their devices. I think that the next thing to happen will be OpenAI bring out an interesting device, and that to your point is the Microsoft-IBM. We're kind of at that stage here. I think there'll be a new device. I don't know what it is, but I feel like that's where we're going. So, look, I think they're like, it's not technically anything radical, but I do think their chips are going to be utilized. I think that might be a way to control the costs of that compute as well. Like, whilst you say there's not a big deal, if the inference cost is zero because you paid for it, then that's something, isn't it?
Main cost is training by and large. But the inference bit is relatively, it exists, but it's nowhere near the training cost. Yes, all things equal, running a query on your own machine is cheaper for the provider than running it on its server and machine. I think the big techs are basically gonna make that's an economic argument that you can say, well, from an economic standpoint, it's better for me to move it there. Sure, more practical kind of competitive positioning. It will be something that will be not so important in the greater scheme of things. Mainly because OpenAI is already doing it all in the server, and they already find that model and make that model, and they have committed to optimizing that model. You can make a bet that over time, so Apple is going to come up. What's the alternative? The counterfactual here, that the Apple will come with a model that runs on their device and then kill OpenAI. They're already making a margin doing that. Do you see what I'm saying here?
No, I get what you're saying, but I also think so I just want to quickly also talk about this then. This local model, so running, there's this Whisper web GPU, it runs in your browser. You load a model up and it runs locally.
Okay, fine, great. It's amazing. What is the benefit of that?
Well, the benefit is you're keeping it local. If you don't want it, like, a lot of people have concerns.
I know, but what percent of people have the concern?
I don't know. Maybe we need to survey that. But
I think it's about one.
Well, I'll dig out some data around that. But I think there will be people concerned around sending their model, their data.
I'm sure, but that's not the mainstream market. Okay, let me give you another one. Okay, so look at Netflix. All right, Netflix are streaming video from the cloud. That was up to 10-15 years ago considered crazy uneconomic model. Think about it. You have to host the videos on some crazy server farm. Then you use unbelievable amount of bandwidth to stream a high definition video to people. Why don't you just download the video, find a way to download the video, ship the video to them so it's running on device? All right. Do you see the parallels in the argument?
Yeah. Look, I'm not but I want to just sort of say, one of the reasons we see the corporate adoption in a lot of cases, I'm just going to use this as an example. People are worried about what you're going to do with their data, and whether that be true or not. And so one of the things is people don't change the defaults. So people don't know how to don't know that they have options for things not to be trained, for your data not to be used around this. And so I feel like the perception for a lot of people is that they don't have any privacy. And so Apple's play here is good from the point of view is that people feel like they're trusted and safe, and they need to make sure they do that.
I agree that that's a good point, but I'm saying it's a bullshit.
Well, that's fine. I'm not going to disagree with that. But all I'm saying is the average person, we live in a bubble where this is all we do, and the people around us. But most people just want to be able to use this and know that they're not going to be, next.
I gave you a great argument you haven't responded to.
Yeah.
I was making a point that arguing that on-device inference is technically superior to server-side inference is like arguing that on-device video playing is superior to streaming. And my argument is like, look at who's the winner of that war, It's the guy with the it's the it's Netflix. So they killed that argument, and it is a valid technical argument. It's actually almost a better argument because the streaming is way more network intensive. So what's your response?
Look, look. I'm going to disagree with you again here, Dror, because so on device is better actually. Why are we using this? I'll give the example. We're using a recording platform which records locally and then uploads it. So I think the performance locally is good. I think the distribution with streaming is better. So the distribution and having larger models, I think, is perfectly. I agree. You're going to be able to have larger models that'll have generally better functionality, let's say. But there will be, for niche things, we've already seen smaller models have equivalent kind of performance in some instances. So I just go, as these smaller models, for me, the smaller model approach is just interesting to say, if you don't want to send your data out and you want to control it, it may work quite well. And people may not care.
That whole discussion makes me even more bullish about why local models are not going to work long term. They're just not viable technologically. It is exactly the same story of on-prem versus on cloud. So you're saying some people do not want to send their data to the cloud. I agree. So they will buy their own computers, they will have their own admin, and they will, enterprise will map their own IT departments, and they will run software on those machines, and people will sell them software to those machines. What's the net effect of that? You run that for 2 decades. What do you get? You get ossified IT departments who defend and don't, who says, no, we can't install, we don't have enough manpower to actually keep updating everything. You've got really frustrating vendors who says, hey, you're stuck with an old version of my Windows Server 2003 on your hardware. You need to upgrade security patches and you haven't done that. Okay, the distribution is just a nightmare. So I have a model on my device now. It's a 2 gigabyte model that was trained 6 years ago. I want the latest that came off the training right now. Okay, so I will download overnight a 2 giga model, and then there's a bug. Listen, the same race is happening. So, the person who has a centralized models infrastructure, they can deploy their latest model, 4.0, 4P, 4G, 5A, 5.1, 6, 7, 8, start running with it. Everybody get access immediately to it because it's, what are they sending? When I connect with ChatGPT, it's like Google. It's like saying, I want search on my device. I think it's equally wrong. Like, what is search? Search is indexing of the internet. So search on device. Let's index the internet, give you the index and get you to, okay, so I'm getting stuck with the yesterday's index. And the fact that the superstar of the entire AI race, which is OpenAI, is chosen that route, gives you an inclination that some serious technological minded people have been thinking a lot about it and took a decision, a strategy. So I'm going to even raise my bet against on-device in this chat. I could be wrong, but I'm raising my bet.
Oh, look, I just want to start off by saying I don't disagree that on-device is not always the best. There's a can of worms that happens with that around vulnerabilities. It causes, we're going to see if that is the case, issues that are going to arise with people not updating, having older versions of things that are local that can be exploited. And we see that with, Windows X, we're going to see that with this sort of scenario. So I'm 100% agreeing with you, but I am saying for some people, that's what they want. I think the big point with on-device, though, Dror, is I don't want to send all my data that is about me and train it something in the cloud. I want it all kept local, and I might not even connect to the internet, and I may just go, I want to be able to kind of take those insights of my own personal data and use them locally and not go to anywhere else.
I just want to tell you that part is a niche part in the entire AI ecosystem. So the personal agent that's trained on your stuff, we'll see. Because your stuff is like, that thing that trains on your stuff, what is it trained on? It's trained on your images that are cloud hosted. It trains on your emails that are cloud hosted. And it trains on your communication that is cloud hosted. So what exactly, Yash, are you wanting to train locally? And half of your communication, not half, 90% of your communication is with other people. So it's on their devices as well and their clouds.
I'll tell you what the concern is. You're right. They all are. But when you're training all of your data in the one place, that is essentially you. And a lot of people are worried about what that might mean for them. And so that's why I'm saying that.
Correct, correct, correct. So, but that's not a technical problem. That's a trust problem. So the question becomes, who are you trusting to do that training? Are you trusting Apple or Google or OpenAI? So let me ask you this. Who are you trusting? People whose business model is to sell you ads, which is Meta, Google. People whose business model is to sell you hardware, and they say this long ago, and I actually, that's why I admire the position in the market. We are not in the pocket of you the product. We are the product, sell you the product, right? That's Apple. Or someone that you don't even know anymore what model are, because they're changing every 10 minutes, which is OpenAI.
Well, I would argue Apple have always said they sell you trust. They want to be the trusted provider. So Apple sell you trust. That's their thing. We keep your data safe. Obviously, they have reasons to do that, which helps them. But they've always focused on privacy, and so I feel like all of this stuff that's what they've thought long and hard about. Where is our advantage? Their advantage isn't in the technology. Their advantage is in the brand and the privacy perception and reality, if that's the case, and not selling it on. That's my view. So I actually think technically it's not a big deal. I think strategically it's pretty good. And I think the fact that, they can add Gemini, they can add Anthropic's Claude, they can add, in the end, OpenAI will just become one of the providers. So I don't think they're in bed, because Microsoft are in bed with Open. They have to at least match that. So I think they'll do that and open it up. And I think, to me, they'll either open it up to other providers and their own. And I think the antitrust things will mean that they have to. So I don't think it's bad. I think what they've done is given an interface to all this stuff. They don't have it all, but I think they've got to play in here. So look, I think once again this is interesting. We've been talking about this for a long time. What is Apple doing with all this stuff? So at least we're seeing it. It's got a long way to go. A lot of this is also out there for the future. And so yeah, let's see how this plays out, and hopefully in 6 months, 12 months, one of us will be right, or both of us will be right, and it'll be good to see.
I think we covered that.
All right, look, I just wanted to cover off. Look, we had some exciting things that are still in play, but over the weekend, Build Club had a big hackathon going on in various cities around the world, in Sydney, in Melbourne, in Canberra, in India, I think in Singapore. And so, look, it was a 24-hour build hackathon across 9 cities, 400 plus AI builders. It was great. The output of that was 68 new AI applications in 24 hours. And so we sort of had our first one here in Canberra. I was one of the judges here. And look, I just want to say I was super impressed by what people developed. We had a small cohort of people here, but every one of the solutions, that's the thing that sort of blew me out. Every one of the solutions that was developed in the hackathon was of use straight away, and people could get some commercial benefit out of that, or benefit out of using those. And I think that's where we're at. People are building useful applications, and I think it's great to see that. There's People Choices Award for that happening globally, and I think so. It's exciting to see what's happening here in the ecosystem around building in AI, and I think we're only going to see more and more of this in Australia. So yeah, great work to the Build Club.
So who won?
Well, that's why I'm saying that's still to be announced. I think there'll be some things announced later on this week. And so that's kind of good. In terms of the local one that won here in Canberra was a group of guys and girls who developed something where you can essentially look at what's in your fridge. It's about food wastage. So in fact, it was also open for using AI for good. But they developed an app. What food's in your fridge? What can I make? How can I make sure that we don't? You plan out what you're going to eat in the week and not waste food. And so look. Great thing in 24 hours. There's some other really great things around there that some of the guys developed, but really great to see. And last but not least, I'm excited about. We've got a Dazed and Diffused in Melbourne next week. We've got a really great lineup, and that's sold out within a day. 150 people want to turn up, do that. We've got some just really great things that are happening there, and I'm excited about what we're going to see there. We're looking to do those. Here locally as well. And so, look, I think there's a lot happening in AI here in Australia and otherwise. And that's another This Week in AI. This one I'm going to do in the voice using Claude. All right, I'm going to just read this. Okay, that's a wrap, guys, for This Week in AI. If you're blown away by our AI innovations we've covered, smash that subscribe button and join the ride. Leave a review, and remember, in the world of AI, anything is possible. This may not even be me, by the way. That's me signing off. And Dror, see you next time.